Everybody just wanders around just as though they're in tulips and lilies and that it's a happy day and everything's good. No, I've got my armor on. If you haven't noticed, I've got my good old Rambo headband. I've got my Come and Take It Texas cannon shirt thing. Why? Because this is a special edition of Brad Stine Has Issues. This is the Militia of the Mind. Let's rock and roll edition. What do I mean by that? None of that patronizing, hey, where's Nick Kress? Where's Karen Boyd? Where's Paula Faye Marie Raucci? Where are all the where's Benjamin Gregory? Where is everybody? Let's talk. Let's make them happy. Not this time. This is a special one. This is where we get to business and we begin to really implement the militia of the mind, where people from all over the world, like-minded people who want to think and fight and believe in liberty and freedom, have access to the best minds in the world. This is a podcast that has evolved into a movement that has involved itself in the areas of culture nobody expected. So, folks, just relax. This is where we're going today. So, sit back, grab whatever armament you use, grab whatever firearm you use, and remember that this is, in fact, Brad Stine Has Issues, and this is our marching song like this. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is God's Comic Brad Stine. This is, in fact, Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. Last week, Rebecca St. James, the wonderful singer, came on. She's sweet. She's got such a wonderful countenance. Wyatt, when it comes to countenances, don't you think she has one of the best of all the guests we've ever had?
Yes, that specific thing that I know about. Yes, she has the most of whatever that is.
You don't know what the countenance, kind of your character trait.
Isn't that one character on Sesame Street? The vampire guy?
Countenance? I don't know.
No, that's the Count, yeah.
Oddly, son, I'm not watching Sesame Street.
Oh, so you know a word like consonants, but you don't know the name of a character from an obscure children's public access show. I see how it is.
Continence is the inability...
Oh, no, we have 7 of those, right? Like, Antarctica is one of them, right? They have the penguins?
Did you know that Antarctica was founded and conquered by a large group of military ants? And they decided to say, let's just call it Antarctica because we lay claim. And they did for quite a few thousand years until they realized that they're that big. And the first time that a human stepped foot, he literally smashed him to death. Did you know that's how Antarctica was built? By ants? That's how they got the name?
That must suck to be an ant and go your whole life thinking you're king of the hill and then realizing you're an ant.
Listen, they are the strongest specimens on Earth as body-to-weight ratio.
Yeah, so then why did they get squished under my dumbbell when I tried to test that?
That's what I'm saying. See, that's the point. This is a point. It's a perfect segue, and I wasn't planning on going ant wild. I wasn't, son. I wasn't thinking ants are really how we're going to draw the folks in. That's not the way I was directing it. But you brought up their Antarctica, and I thought perhaps I should give them a few props. But think about this. You're the strongest species on Earth as far as your weight compared to what you can do. They can hold a big old, piece of cracker this big, and you'll watch them walking with a leaf, and they weigh this, and they're carrying that. So they're warriors. They have a warrior ant colony. What are they called? Fire ant? No, isn't there a
bullet ants, army ants?
Army ants, see?
Yeah.
Army ants. So that's
rather lucky you stumbled upon that one, huh?
I did stumble upon Army Ant, and once again, God has been with us. He wants this theme to remain strong. Ants are small but mighty strong. But yet, when they think they're the biggest, baddest thing in town, here comes the human, and they realize, oh, even though strength to weight ratio has its perks, there does come a point where the weight is too much. And in this case, the humans conquer the ant.
Well, that's why you just get a second ant.
Or a bunch of ants, a group of ants.
Honestly, if you had an ant holding another ant holding something, wouldn't that let them hold more?
Well, yeah, they could double up their ant antithesis. They're antithesis of
The antithesis
weakness.
of strength, yeah.
Yes, is what they would do. It would, well, that would be the backwards. So it would be the antithesis
Yeah, I
of
just remember-
antithesis of weakness.
Yeah, yes, of course. I mean, then again, they are ants, so maybe antithesis is the correct word for strength, because
Well, maybe.
they're tiny.
I guess when you're in an ant world, you can name things whatever you want, because what are they going to say? Who's
Well-
going to fight you? Who's going to fight you?
But technically, they don't even talk. They just leave, like, pheromone trails for the other ants to follow.
I
So,
know.
like, what does that even sound like if you were to try to convert that into speech?
I don't know. The last thing I want to stumble upon is a pheromone. I'll tell you that right here now. I've had it happen. It's not pretty. It's not.
I mean, the Egyptians had tons of them, and look how they turned out.
I know. Well, the Egyptians are no longer with us. They failed. And, you know, they were a great and mighty culture. They built these edifices. By the way, people don't even know how they did it. To this day, they are really not sure how they built the pyramid. They came up with these concepts, and they realized, I don't know if they're going to work. As though there was technology thousands of years ago that we've lost. This, you know, and you know what, Wyatt? There would have been a time in my life when I would say, that's nonsense. It's not that big if it's not some kind of, they weren't, I've actually heard that they were in touch with harmonics, that they knew how to use harmonics, vibrations to help move boulders and so forth into precise positions. And there was a time I go, that is the most ridiculous bull crap. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but because of the cult of Corona, because the CDC and the World Health Organization and ESG and all of the these groups that have proven that they do not follow science anymore. This is pure power play to literally control the world, which is really happening. It's not a conspiracy. It's not something that you can deny unless you're just so fragile and unable to grab your sword and realize I'm at war and I'm going to fight, so you want to ignore it. It's happening. So I'm telling you, maybe the Egyptians had powers you and I can't even begin to understand, and don't put it past them to have harnessed groups of gigantic villages of ants.
I mean, they mummified all their pheromones, and like, look at how many movies we have about them.
I know.
They're being just like awesome, dangerous, undead thing. Like, clearly, they were onto something.
You know, if you were dead, would you want to be paraded around in a museum for people to look at?
If I was dead, I wouldn't know how to kill.
I know, but I'm just saying, if somebody said, by the way, when you die, you're going to be a display in a museum thousands of years from now. They're just going to look at you and go, ooh, that guy used to be alive, but look at him now.
No.
And then they're going to say, I wonder if he was attacked by ants.
No. I can just imagine I'm dead and my ghost is just watching me on display like, really? You got my bad side.
I know. Do you believe in ghosts, son?
That's a tough one.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
It's a yes or no question.
Well, it is a tough one because there's so much evidence to and to the contrary of that.
So that would cancel each other out, thus meaning there is no evidence.
Which means that it's both true and false.
Which means it's neither. It's moot.
But if it's neither, then that means it's both.
Why would not name a band moot?
That's a good idea. Actually, would that work for a band name? What would you play? Just different renditions of 4 minutes and 32 seconds?
I would say.
I'd buy the album.
Do you know that most of the people that are watching us right now have no ideas what 4 minutes and 32 seconds references?
And I feel sorry for them.
Well, listen.
That was a fantastic joke that you should have gotten.
I got it.
No, I'm talking to the audience.
I know.
You
Well,
should have gotten that. I mean,
you know, I'm not looking, but I'll bet you Carl and Boyd put a little laugh face in there, and I'll bet you, I guarantee you, St. Nick was like, oh, yeah, I've got the album.
And I guarantee you the other 90% of our audience is desperately Googling, what
They're right now.
are
What
they
is
talking
4
about?
minutes? Is that an actual song? Listen, this is a special edition of Militia of the Mind. Last week we had Rebecca St. James. Listen, I've already recorded. We got 10 people in the queue that we have recorded that we're going to be bringing up in the next couple months, as well as more people. But I got so many people I have interviewed, like Rebecca's last week. I think I interviewed her son 2 months ago or something. So I started getting because I got so excited about the people that I was able to get. And I got to tell you something, I'm shocked that people come on my show. I just feel like I'm nobody who cares about me, and so I'm like, I don't have some gigantic millions of people watching show. It's growing. You said to me just the other day that in our little Spotify we've had over 1,000 downloads. So it's growing, and it's going to grow because we have great guests, not because of me, even though I'm shocked.
Honestly, we could replace you with an ant and nobody would notice.
Well, the antennas, because I don't have any.
Don't you?
Well, not that they're visible.
I mean, why do you think you're wearing the bandana? Come on.
I told you, it's a Militia of the Mind.
Oh, I know this
special edition of Brad Stine Has Issues.
I know this what you told people, but come on. We all know why.
Come on. I don't have an antenna, but here's what... But I do have a radar as to the lay of the land of America. For the last number of years, I have stood up against political correctness and stood for free speech in America as a comic. And now we're getting, thank God, people like Rob Schneider, who's got a special out. He's conservative. Jim Brewer, who we interviewed, doing conservative stuff. I would say Bill Burr's stuff can be. He's got some leftist stuff, but can be fairly pushing back against wokies. I'm watching the comics, thank God, push Ricky Gervais. Oh, thank you, God, for the atheist. But free speech is crucial, and it's crucial for all of us. And it has so destroyed academia that this is where we must go to have a shot at putting the brakes on this, because they are making activists out of our children. It's not a joke. They're making them woke, and they are turning them into basically communist activists. It's real. They are the ones that say you cannot speak in this place. We will not give a platform to ideas we disagree with. Any belief system that cannot withstand intellectual scrutiny must be abandoned, attacked, criticized, and crushed. That's what happens when people don't let others disagree. It means they are wanting to control. And the Militia of the Mind is going to help put a stop to that. You know what? I'm going to be honest with you guys. James Lindsay, who did those amazing fake papers years ago to see if they could get crazy crap into academia in published, and they did. They did. And I read his book, Cynical Theories. It's excellent. I got a new book, the Marxification of Education. I interviewed him, and he's been on Joe Rogan, I think 3 times, and he's been on Jordan Peterson. So he's been on the biggest podcast in the world. I got him because he's one of us. He's on our side. He's not a believer in Christ, but he is a agnostic. He used to be an atheist. He's moved in agnosticism. He was with Charlie Kirk here in town from Turning Point USA, and I went to see him then. So I've got him. He's coming on here soon. I've got another great apologist, Frank Turek. You might have seen his many clips all over there. I got him. He's interviewed. He's in. I've got a guy that was on America's Got Talent. Well-known guy that's very interesting. We've got him. It's already here. You're going to see it. And we're going to have special extra bonus issues of speaking to these people, and that you're going to have special access if you decide to become part of the Mighty 10,000, the Militia of the Mind. It's easy to go to my website, bradstein.com, find it out. Karen, as we speak, is putting up, I guarantee you, the link to become part of the Mighty 10,000. It's $3 a month, so you end up paying $36. You're done for the year. But I'm going to fight, and we're going to laugh, and we're going to cry, and we're going to fight, and we're going to pray, and we're going to believe that we can save this nation. I don't know if we will, because I can't make it happen, but I can certainly try. So we're making this kind of like, what do you call it, like a telethon. Remember those telethons, Wyatt? No, you don't. No, you don't.
I remember people making fun of telethons.
Yes. Well, this one is not make funnable. It's unfunnable, because this one's about the Militia of the Mind.
So it's not fun?
Well, it's fun, but it's not funnable, which to me has more of a humorous aspect to it. Why do you think this still makes me look Rambo?
Yes, your antenna all hidden.
Listen, I want you to understand something about why I started doing this, folks. You need to understand that I didn't want to watch myself just sit here and say, Oh, here's another clip of a leftist saying something crazy. Now listen, I don't know if you guys saw this. I did a whole clip with Ricky Gervais when he had about 10 minutes of him mocking Christianity or God or religion. And I couldn't take it. And I love him. I think he is a brilliant comedian, writer, created amazing television shows. Brilliant. Atheist. And a missionary for it. I couldn't keep my mouth shut. So I listened to a clip and then I responded to it. And didn't we show that? Did we show that during Issues, Wyatt?
I believe we did, yeah.
I mean, it was fairly long, so we didn't show the whole thing. I think I cut it.
I think we did like the first half of it, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I did that. And so I want to do more of those things. And as I speak to some of these guests, I would love for you guys to be able to say hi to them. I'd love for you to ask questions. And that's virtually never happens anywhere. And I want to create gatherings where we can come behind the scenes. It won't be on the podcast, more than likely. Maybe we can figure out a way to do that live sometime. I don't know. I mean, with you at Tech, I would guess that's never going to happen in my lifetime. By the time I'm a mummy, perhaps we will have figured it out, but we're both long gone by then, carried off by ants and probably burned in a funeral pyre. But that's a whole nother episode. But this one is different. This one is about you guys doing me a favor, and here's what it is. Part of the Militia in the Mind is us committing to being proactive to defending our faith in the workplace, our country, our freedoms, our free speech in school, in the workplace. You're going to have to take a stand. You're going to have to take risks. It might cost you your job, and it's real. But we will have attorneys that will fight for you. Say, I got fired from my religious beliefs, and they will try to get you everything you deserve and then some. We must bury these woke companies, destroy them, crush them into bankruptcy, just like Anheuser-Busch. I want that company to go under. And yeah, lots of good people are going to lose their jobs, and they need to. So they are outraged, and all the wokies who try to take over companies are thrown out. You're not Americans. You're civilians, you're citizens, you're not one of us. You don't believe in freedom. You allow communism and Marxism to rule you. It's despicable. You're a disgrace. And you're using capitalism, which they continue to mock and ridicule, and you're using that in the profit margin while you put my flag down that's giving you the freedom to do this. Shame on you. I don't say shame on you to them. They have no shame. They're despicable humans. Now, they can fix it. They can repent. They can ask forgiveness. Like I said, I will never watch an NBA game again for the rest of my life unless they apologize for crapping on my flag, taking a side for Marxists as opposed to America, give $1 billion to conservative and Christian and patriotic ideas. They must give $1 billion like they did to them. I'll come back, but I won't until then. Now, it's not costing them much, though they are hurting. The NBA is really in bad shape. The people aren't watching it anymore because we've got all these multi-millionaires saying how oppressed they are. Nobody's going to watch that crap. And if you do, you don't deserve America. You're the problem. This is what I keep trying to tell you guys. And you're my fans. You're conservatives more than likely. You're Christians more than likely. You're patriots more than likely. You watch NBA. You're the problem. And you're the best of us. You're on the right side. For this to work, it takes discipline, and it has to cost you something. You know, Christianity is a unique religion. It's a religion of inconvenience. It's always putting you out for the sake of somebody else. And it's really odd because it tells you whatever you need, you have to give away. So if you need love, it doesn't say go find it. It says go give it. If you need empathy, don't find empathy. Go give it. If you need forgiveness, go forgive somebody. If you need money, give money to those who need even more. This is how God's economy works. He says plant seed and watch what I'll do. So this is what it is. I don't care if you're not a Christian. It's truth. It's the only time in human history that a man proved to be God by dying and rising again. There's nothing like it. There's no equivalent to it. He was also predicted in the Torah, one of the oldest and most influential books in human history, that gave us monotheism. The foremeaning of Israel and the Jews came from the Torah, which then simply referenced there's going to be a Messiah. His name is Jesus. We now have him. That's why I'm a Christian, because big respecter of Jews and Israel, big fighter. I did a whole Boycott This, which was a documentary defending Israel against the BDS movement. So I'm pro them, but there is a way to see the world that's true, and there's a way to see the world that isn't. And so I want you to be that. Now, some of you have already signed up, so don't worry. Now, here's the problem. I'm just telling you now, guys. You're going to pay for your shirt. You're going to have to pay for your shirt because the subscription is $3 a month. It's $36. That won't even cover a shirt. Okay, so you'll have to pay for it. Now, for those who will sign up with a little higher, I think we're just going to have 2 or 3, and they're not going to be expensive. I think the highest one will be maybe $30 a month. You'll get extra stuff. You'll get a free shirt, for one thing. But it's only because we're working together. I'm going to give you more content. And as a matter of fact, do you guys remember when we had Nancy Piercy on? Now, she's a professor. She wrote the Toxic War on Masculinity, and we had her on. We showed her book right before it debuted, and now she's been on tons of big major name podcasts doing the same thing. After we wrapped, we talked about some things, and we probably got 17 minutes of her and I talking about some other things that were not shown on the podcast. I have it. That's what you guys want to have access to. Some of these people that you find interesting, Bart Millards of Mercy Me, Rebecca St. James, Mike Fisher, the ex-hockey player, James Lindsay. Who else have we had that's pretty? J. Warner Wallace, Robert George, Professor Robert George. I mean, really interesting people. You're going to hear more about these guys, and I'm providing it for you. I'm blessed that I have an opportunity to talk to these people. They interest me. I bring on people I think would be interesting to you, but frankly, they interest me, so I figured maybe they'll work for you as well. And I got a lot of great people still coming. I will be bringing on, as I've told you, atheists, non-believers, but that we're looking for something in common, trying to see what a relationship and a communication will look like for people who don't disagree, but trying to find some commonality, like when I had my complete Elizabeth Dennehy, my friend that I acted with, that played my wife in Welcome to Paradise, the movie, who's a far leftist. But I said, can we find something in common? And that was the story that I told. Go look it up in the archives. But this is really what I need from you guys. I want you to go beyond just saying, you know, we've signed up, and I appreciate it. Come on, guys, it's pretty cheap, $3. So maybe I'll have mugs and stuff too, but I do want you to do, I want to make some other things where, like, if you get me 10 people that sign up, that you would know of our group and say, hey, jump in on this guy. We're trying to grow this thing. If you can show me you got 10 people, then I'm going to send you something special. I'm going to provide something special that only you will have access to. I'll give you maybe 3 choices of whatever that might be. But it doesn't cost you anything, but it is helpful to us. I've told you from the get-go that we are going to build this together, and you did it. This is our team effort. This is the body working together. But I wanted to show you just a clip, just a small clip, couple minutes of Nancy Piercy afterwards, after the talk, that you can watch. Just some extra fun stuff, but just to give you a taste of what you're going to have for this. It's not just paying and that, and then I leave it, go at that. I want to provide as much content, but more importantly, inspirational content as possible. So Wyatt, why don't you go ahead and show that clip real quick of Nancy Piercy afterwards, unseen stuff, so you can see just a taste of what you guys are going to have access to if you subscribe to the Mighty 10,000.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I always love talking to you. You're such a wonderful intellect. You really are. I mean, it almost seems patronizing maybe because it's like, what, for a woman, you mean? Big, and I'm sure you've had to grapple with that throughout your history.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a wonderful...
I have to tell you, Brad, I almost wondered if I could fit this into the interview, but it didn't quite fit. I loved it when you started out saying that you're an autodidact, because in my field, I still am. I don't have a PhD. I never had the time or the money. I was always writing books. Yeah. I had to write books because I had to make money. I was always writing books, and so I do not have a PhD, which is very unusual for somebody at my level.
Hang on a second. We're still rolling.
Oh.
No, so what I was going to say to you is, go ahead and we'll ask the question, and then we can just edit it into the interview if you want. You said you wanted to use it. We can use it.
Yeah, I considered racing it.
Okay. So how do you want me to set it up?
Yeah, how do you say? Well, it might fit back when you first said that you were an autodidact.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know, restate that or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, so the truth is, I didn't have a college degree. I'm a high school graduate. That's about it. I'm an autodidact, and I didn't understand what that was till I looked into it. But my entire life, I've loved books. I mean, I used to get up in the morning on Saturday mornings, get the encyclopedia. I taught myself sign language, the alphabet, by looking at the pictures in the encyclopedia. I just love information, and that's what I love about your books. But it's a different way of learning. I'm sure as a professor, you notice that not every student learns the same and needs specifics. So I don't know, your perspective on the best way to learn, but perhaps it's different than mine. I don't know.
Well, I love the way you said that, because I have often said I'm an autodidact in the sense of I don't have a PhD. Someone at my level, teaching at the university, usually does have a PhD, and I just never had the time or money to go back to school. I was always writing books. And on the basis of the books, of course, is why I got hired at Houston Christian University. But compared to my colleagues, I do have a master's degree, but I never had the PhD. And that's unique, because even very small Christian colleges now can hire PhDs, and it looks so much better for their accreditation. So it was, it's kind of risky. I looked for a long time for a teaching job. So yes, and I have to tell you, Brad, I think there's some positives to being an autodidact, because you think more creatively.
So like I said, I mean, that's just a taste of what can happen. Think about if we have all these other folks that are going to have much things to talk about and other interesting things that maybe it will be off topic or funny or personal. So I want to give that to you guys. I want you to help me build this into something that we did from the grassroots ground up. We did it. Karen Boyd and Benjamin Gregory and Paula Fay Marie Rauchi and Danny Herring and St. Nick Kress. Who am I leaving out, son? Think of somebody else.
Force Bainey?
Force Bainey. He's got the best name in the whole wide world. Whole wide world. Force Bainey. Mm-hmm, yeah. Why? I wish my name was Force Bainey. You can laugh all you want.
Yeah, I will.
But it's not. But you guys have been here from the get-go. Crazy comedian sitting on his laptop, and here we got a podcast, and it's working. One of the guys that I have had on the most, do you know who it is, White? Who I've had on as a guest more than anybody?
Rick Green. By honestly an order of magnitude, feels like.
Yes, Rick Green. Why? Because he was the only man of status who was smart, good, and would say yes. He'd come on. He's a friend, and we do live shows together. As a matter of fact, we got something coming up, let's see, the 22nd of this month. So is it next, let me see, is it this week? Might be. I'm trying to think of what, 22nd. Anyways, I'm going to be in outside of Detroit performing a Comedy and Constitution show with Rick. So here's something that I did. I filmed Rick and I in an interview January 1st of this year, and I was going to use it as the launch of the podcast for 2023, and we ended up not using it for some reason. I think it's because White screwed something up, and if not, I'm going to just stick with that story. But what I wanted to know was, I said, hey, we got all these Supreme Court decisions coming up. At this point, it was January 1st. They hadn't occurred yet. So what's going to happen? What's that going to be like? We had just had the Roe v. Wade decision, so we discussed that. How is this going to impact things? And I said, what's going to happen in 2023? And I thought, it didn't get played, but it was very specific. This is the first show. Here's 2023. It's all in front of us. What's going to happen? But it never aired. We're going to air it tonight. That's going to be the episode. Why? I see it as this prophetic episode. Here's what we didn't know what was going to happen 6 months ago. And now, and I haven't looked at it since then, and now we're going to play it, and we're going to see, did we predict some things? Did we see some things coming? Did some things happen in the interim that we wouldn't have known then that now we know. But Rick is so good. Patriot Academy, the actual physical manifestation of it, where you can send your kids, is blowing up. He's already got the gun range up where they teach you self-defense and handgun control for concealed carry permit holders throughout the U.S. And that's on the campus that he's going to build, where they'll teach your kid on conservative values, Christians, and American history, and how to defend ourselves, whether we're creating lawyers. You know, Lauren Boebert went to it. Numerous other people who have, I think, even been assistants to senators and congressmen went to Patriot Academy, young youth that come and got strength out of that. And so we're going to have, by the way, for being subscribers to the Militia of the Mind and the Mighty 10,000, some of the curriculum that Rick has created from Patriot Academy. That's going to be available on my site that you can buy and purchase, so you can educate yourself and your family. So that's the interview we're going to do today as this special Warrior Edition, because I want to see, what did we see coming, or did we? And you need to know, Rick, too. We are a coalition of like-minded folks that want to defend ourselves while the getting's good. But here's what I'm asking you today for this special edition as we get ready to launch into the prophet interview with Rick. If you have already joined, I got to fix my antenna. As you already, if you've already joined, thank you. And like I said, very soon, maybe next week, we'll be able to have a prototype shirt up so I can show you what it's going to look like. And we're going to be able to start getting them sent. And you'll have them with your numbers on the shoulders. But I'm looking for 10. I realize for this to happen, because we don't get 10,000 people watching this show. I wish we did. Many would, but they don't show up because of Wyatt. He's difficult. He's difficult to listen to. His humor falls flat a lot. And I've just hold him up by the best I can. It's hard, folks, to carry him and my show at this.
Aren't you the guy who started the 20-minute running joke about ants? And you think I'm the one falling flat here?
Well, that's not a hill I'm going to die on.
Just don't.
I'm that good.
You're something, all right.
Brad Stine has ant puns. That was the second name we were going to come up with.
For some reason, we thought they didn't roll off the tongue as well.
Nah, doesn't roll off the tongue whatsoever. But I will say this, folks. I need you guys who are part of this to get us 10 guys. Once you got those 10 folks that have signed up, you just send me their names. Now, we'll have them, but I won't know who did what. Just send me their names. Yeah, we got Joe, Fred, Jim, blah, 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 10. Then I'm going to send you something special. I'll contact you personally as long as I have access to you, either email or even private message on Facebook, and we'll help you. Folks, listen, I'm not screwing around. I have no pride when it comes to saying, here's what we need. But I promise some interesting content and unique, one-of-a-kind content is going to come out of the studio, and you built it. You built a studio, a show, an influencer in America, because you showed up and you cared, and that's why I can't do this by myself. I can sit here all day long by myself. But if you ain't giving, and if you ain't participating, and you aren't getting people together so we make a militia of the mind, outthink them, outpray them, outbelieve them, outlast them. We're not going to make it. I mean, there were moments in human history, in American history, before the Revolutionary War, during the Revolutionary War, before the Civil War, during the Civil War, where Americans wondered if their nation would survive. And we look back in them and we honor them and we're amazed by them, and they were so courageous and so strong, and some of them didn't survive. And we honor them. And all I'm saying is, these people, I guarantee you, would think, I'm no better than you. I just wanted to be free and leave it to my family. It's your turn. It's my turn. It's Wyatt's turn. And he's no good at virtually anything. Certainly not buttons. But he's my son. And he comes from my loins. So I defend him.
You just couldn't resist, could you?
Nah, I just feel like it's a running gag that just has so much momentum at this point that it's never going to go away.
Oh, that's fantastic. I cannot wait for that. Again.
Okay, well, anyways, I don't hear you with a running joke. When you come up with your own running joke, and then maybe we'll worry about it. Until then, leave mine in peace, if you know what I'm saying. But nevertheless, I appreciate you guys. I'm really interested in watching this interview with Rick from 6 months ago. I've never seen it since, so I'm going to be a virgin with you, trying to see what we thought of what we said. But folks, have some hope, have some optimism. We're still here, and I'm watching people. There's one guy that I really like. He's an atheist, but I love what he's doing. They're fighting back against the academy being overtaken by wokeism. So I want to find guys like that. I'm going to get them on an interview if I can. But we will find a common ground, and we will fight like men, like women, like Americans. We'll fight like freedom lovers and liberty givers, and we'll defend them for our family. It's our turn, but it's worth it. It's important. So let's keep growing. Please share this. Please try to help me get the 10 more. Like I said, I hope next week, hopefully, maybe not, hopefully though, we'll have the logo and the shirt so you can see what you're getting. We'll get it out. It's happening. It's just slow but sure, because it's me and Wyatt hanging on by our bootstraps, doing the best we can. But I so appreciate you guys. I hope you appreciate this was a telethon episode. But it's the only way we're going to blow this thing up into a whole new realm. I want to do sketches and funny things. I mean, really, I want to get creative and have fun. I want you to enjoy it, and I want you to feel good someday. If this helps affect an election, if it helps affect turning some wokies into thinkers, if it helps some schools lose everything for being woke and then rebuilding as a true American, if it helps participate in that, you can feel proud of that. You were part of a movement, and it wasn't hard. It was just discipline and a commitment and a belief that there was something worth fighting for and worth dying for. So God bless you guys for coming on. Thank you for being here, and let's go see 6 months ago what Rick Green and God's Comic Brad Stine got together and talked about on New Year's Day. I wonder what 2023 is going to be like. Let's see if we got close. Let's see if there was some things that we couldn't have anticipated. Let's see if some things went better than we'd hoped. Let's see if things are still bad. But we're 6 months in. So here you go. The special edition. What was supposed to be the first episode of Stine Has Issues 2023. Brad Stine and Rick Green. Enjoy. So as you know, because my job is A, to entertain you with hysterical humor, B, to inspire you with your faith and your commitment to truth and reality, and lastly, to single-handedly change the world, I realized that the third one wasn't working out so well. I can't do it single-handedly. I need some help. I need lots of help. And in this particular case, this particular guest has been probably the most frequent guest I've had on Brad Stine Has Issues. Number one, because he is very impressed by my intelligence, my insight, and my looks. I know he patterns a lot of his looks and his moisturizing on me in the way I do it. But more importantly than that, he is a patriot and a man who's committed to the faith, which is more important than anything, but then also to defending this nation, which God, in his hierarchical order of giving governments to humans, has decided that we're allowed to seek justice. We are allowed to obey the laws that are congruent with the land that we inhabit. And most importantly, that we are to be virtuous people that actually live this world, and that he kind of leaves it up to us. We blame a lot of stuff on God, but in fact, he said, I kind of made you the rules. I've given you the parameters, but now you got to get to work, just like in the garden. He didn't say, here's your place, here's a hammock, enjoy yourself. He said, get to work, tend to the garden. And so that, for all my atheist friends that watch my show, might be something that you think as methodological, but here's the truth. There is this ultimate meta-narrative that created the world. And this particular one also created the West, which you happen to inhabit, and all the values and the virtues that you love, and the freedoms and the religious liberties and being free from religion that you love. was given to you by Christians. Whether you like it or not, that's history. And so we speak about nothing but truth. And so the man that I'm about to bring on, I wanted to bring on right here as we launch 2023. I always like to think a new year is a new hope, new embers burning, that something great can happen. I mean, we might as well. But the truth is, as you know, America is in danger. It cannot last forever without it being fortified, protected, and defended. And so that is why I have been fortunate and blessed to make a friend and a fellow patriot and warrior, Rick Green, to do events, live events together, to do some projects that we've done together, but also to bring him on, Brad Stine Has Issues, and talk about the lay of the land as America is as of right now, and what can be done about it to fix the real broken parts. He's in Texas, so he has a firsthand account at some of the serious broken parts of America. So we're going to bring him in right now to, I'm sorry, folks, buckle up, but it's not going to be an easy ride, but we need to do this as warriors to launch 2023. Please welcome Brad Stine Has Issues favorite, Rick Green. Rick, how are you?
I'm not good, man. I'm righteously angry because after all of the work, after all the sacrifice, after giving of my life, my fortune, my sacred honor all year long in 2022, Santa nor any of his reindeer put under my tree Brad Stine moisturizer. I mean, you said in your opening that I model my moisturizing. No, I don't. No, because no one has delivered the very special Brad Stine. I didn't even know you had it out. And anyway, I just want you to know I'm disappointed.
I did send you some, and I don't know how to say this to you. But oftentimes Cara does get a hold of it before you, and she hoards it because it is. Women love it, men love it, goats love it. It's really an all-purpose moisturizer. So I'm glad that you enjoy it, and of course for a small donation, I probably could find another small jar to send you. But either way, you've got some great looking skin for 2023.
I'll suffer.
So Rick, listen, you and I have been in the trenches for a long time. We know each other, we love each other, and we're willing to fight for this nation and our faith and whatever that means and however that comes. When we first started talking like that, it was more metaphorical, theoretical, but clearly we are in a different time in America, maybe not historically, but certainly historically for you and I to actually be living in it in real time, what it must have looked like for folks who were there during the Revolutionary War period, who were there during the Civil War, World War I and II, maybe Spanish, Indian War, I don't know, but those moments where there was really something at stake. Usually our historical records that we reference and try to think what would we do if we were there, and we assume we'd be great, courageous warriors. Well, we're here.
Yeah.
We're here. So I got to be honest with you, brother. You are going to have to talk me off the ledge because I don't know if I have ever felt so, so almost doubtful that America can survive, because the things that are happening are so fast, so furious, and so unprecedented that it's a war, and it's something I've never experienced. So I'm trying to learn as I go. So I do want you to be inspirational and hope that we can launch into 2023 with hope that we can overcome this. We're not going to give up till we have our last breath. But what has happened in America in this last few years that is so unique that we really are almost treading on ground that has never even been experienced before in America? Or am I over-exaggerating the case?
Well, it's important that you said in America, right? Because it certainly has been experienced by other nations and at other times in history. As Solomon said, nothing new under the sun. I know you know that. But for us, it is new. And for the American people, we're definitely on on new ground. And, let me start by saying you and I have been doing this together for right at a decade now. And just like you said in the beginning, we would talk about and warn about some of these things, and we had to almost soft pedal it. Otherwise, everybody'd say you're conspiracy theorists, or you guys are negative, or you're over. And so we would, obviously, as you do better than anybody alive today, lace it with humor, and then boom, hit the truth. And we would try to warn people of what was coming, because we could see the signs, because we're both students of history. We both love looking back and saying, what can we learn from the past? And so we saw the Marxism, we saw the cultural issues coming. We both were very hopeful and hope, prayed that it would not take root like it did, and that we would be able to defeat those forces in big ways and push them to the curb. But to be fair, to be honest, to be blunt, we lost. We lost in many, many ways as a nation over the last 15, 20 years, and we're now living with the result of it. Cultural Marxism has won in virtually every major institution in America. They own education. They own the media. They own big business now. All the corporations are woke. Not all, but most of the big corporations are woke. They own the entertainment industry. They own half the pulpits in America. Really, the church is the only institution that we haven't lost the whole thing. We still have about, a pretty sizable percentage of the pulpit. So I say all that to just be blunt and honest. They own all the state institutions, the federal, all the governmental institutions, from the top down. So they've infiltrated those agencies so much so that now we have federal law enforcement being weaponized against political enemies of whoever's in charge at the White House. So it is dire. There is no question that part of it, you're not exaggerating. It's not hyperbole. It's certainly not meant to scare people, because that's not who you and I are. We don't want to talk about these things. We would much rather talk about the positive. And so anyway, I think it's important for us to say up front, that's where we are. As we go into 2023, we do not know whether or not the nation will be saved. We do not know whether or not the nation is going to head ultimately towards civil war, or will just disintegrate. We are at getting close to the 250-year mark, and all the bad signs are there. Now, having said all of that and all of that doom and gloom, even if it goes that way, we can still fight with joy, because that's the God that we serve, and that's the only way I know of to enter the battle. I can be righteously angry at the same time I'm joyful because of my religious faith. And while at the same time, my religious faith is what causes me to be righteously angry, because I see the evil that's marching across our country. On the bright side, the hopeful signs are this: the left is spoiled. They don't know. They can't control themselves. There's no self-control. They don't know how to back off and read the tea leaves and say, wait a minute, we're making enemies now. They have gone so far to the point of carving up children, of claiming that parents have no right to be involved in the upbringing of their children, educational decisions of their children. They have gone so far in tyrannical takeover of the church and business and the marketplace and all those kind of things, that they've awakened the giant. They have awakened millions of people in America. Not enough yet. There's not enough people awake yet to save the country. But there are millions that have awakened, that are now engaged in the fight and doing things that they never thought they would have to do in their lifetime. People that never been involved, like you and I have been involved in their whole life. And now all of a sudden they are. And so there is a movement that is exploding across the country. I don't know if it'll be enough. Honestly, I think we have to wake up. We have to double that movement at a minimum in order to have enough to start winning the battles necessary. And even if we win, here's more doomsday for a second, even if we win, the damage is done. There is massive damage to the culture, whether you talk about the 5 to some people say 20 million that have come across the border illegally, and we don't know who a lot of these people are and the damage that they're going to be able to wrought, or the damage to the psyche of our children, the damage to you've got half the country that actually wants socialism and Marxism now, because that's what they've been taught their entire life, because Marxism controlled the education system. So all of that is going to have an effect. At the same time, I'm ready to do battle, man. I'm ready to fight those people. You're ready to fight those people. And if there's enough that will stand up and say, we will not lay down, we will not cower, we will not be afraid to speak truth because you're going to call us names or you're going to try to cancel us. If there's enough people in that category, we'll push this stuff back. It's going to take a generation to do it, but we can turn it around. I don't know which way it's going to go, bro. I know it could go either way, which means we have to be willing to give of our lives, fortunes, and sacred honor in a way that we've never done before. More of our money, more of our time, more of our reputation, all of that. That's what it's going to take to turn this thing. And then we'll find out maybe 10 years from now whether or not all of that effort is going to pay off.
Okay, so that is a great summary of where we're at. Obviously, it is what it is, that we have to deal with the truth or we're not going to get anywhere. And it's been put in our heads in the sand so many years is why we're here, frankly, because people, when we were saying these things years ago, didn't take it seriously. And I got to be honest, though, Rick, sometimes it's not even so much that people don't see it and don't like it. I think a lot of times they do. But I think the biggest problem that I see, other than just the threat, is not knowing exactly how does the citizen, the government, which is the people, which we've always talked about, and it, again, platitudes. I mean, they're all true and it's all beautiful and it's all real, but when you really need to put it into place, when you really need a real militia, an actual group of American citizens who are trying to defend themselves and their property or their state or whatever, because they feel as though they're being attacked. When you really need to not just go to a school board meeting as a parent and say, hey, this is inappropriate. You're not going to have sexual books on the shelves for sixth graders. We're not going to have drag show pedophilia. As a normalization of how Americans and how this nation is going to work. We're not
or teaching that is causing your children to question their own sexuality and their own gender, right? So the brainwashing of children as well.
And none of that could have happened if they didn't start by teaching us to question whether America was good.
That's right.
Where America actually was, as a system, something that was beautiful and noble and had a chance to give more rights and freedoms than anybody else had ever done. So let's start there. So the infiltration definitely started, and you know, I've been preaching and speaking against the Frankfurt School and political correctness for many, many years. And when they fled Germany and ended up at Columbia University in New York, that's where it all started getting into an academia area, as far as getting in onto our soil. I'm not saying that maybe some American intellectuals, even prior to that, weren't already playing with it. A lot of them went to Germany to school, and that's where they picked up some of this crazy crap. The guy, I just blanked on the first real kind of socialist president, with the glasses. I don't know. You know who he is.
Not Wilson or
Wilson.
Or Wilson. Yeah, Wilson. Yeah,
Wilson.
Yeah.
He was one of the first ones that really believed he needed to change the Constitution, that it was outdated and so forth. So it's been a long fuse that has been burning a long time. But let's start with education. So we all sit here and we know that we have institutions that are saying Marxist concepts. Of course, they don't call it that. They call it being tolerant, or they talk about it being
diversity, diversity, inclusion, equity.
All masqueraded as kind and virtuous words that essentially are just breaking down Western Judeo-Christian ethics and turning it into this counterfeit and this destructive force that does nothing but destroy everything it touches. But they've done it. So instead of us sort of lamenting that, they've already accomplished that. And then that from the universities ended up into the schools, the high schools and the elementary and so on and so forth. So here we sit. Now, your expertise is the Constitution and American history. So we can learn from history if we're wise, and should. So is there, from a legal or precedential standpoint as Americans, because we do believe in the free speech, so in some odd way, we're a little hamstrung in how we can just go out and start saying, you can't say this or say that, because we do want freedom, even if that freedom says crap we hate. The moment the government can start shutting down speech, they can shut down any, so we have to be careful. But nevertheless, I remember years ago when I was doing the documentary on Israel, I was in Alan Dershowitz's apartment, and he's a Constitution teacher in Harvard, or was. And I said, it's not like you can use the First Amendment to destroy the First Amendment, And he goes, oh, yeah, you can. Sure you can. Yeah, that's exactly what it's for. You can go try to make the First Amendment go away. You can do that. You can try to amend the First Amendment. Once you do, there'll be no more amendments because there's no more freedom. But you literally that's the cost, and the fragility of freedom is you can even give it away. You'll never get back, but you can do that. So what I'm trying to ask you with this long question, but I'm trying to make sure I get all the pieces of the puzzle and then let you take the soapbox. Is there a way, whether it be, and again, I'm just using these terms to try to find a place to hang a concept, treason, anarchy. I'm trying to think of what terms might fit this. Is there any precedent by which we could say, whether it's through Congress or through our local state legislatures, maybe it has to be state to state, to say, we're not allowing you to teach this, and we will consider it an existential threat against America? CRT, critical race theory, Marxist concepts, you're not allowed to teach it because it literally is destroying our nation, so we're not letting you do that. Is there a precedent for that and a legal constitutional way that we could at least try to go back into the institutions of academia and say, nope, we're pulling the plug. This is never happening again?
Okay, so let's back up to something you said, then I'll tie it to the actual question. You alluded to the fact that people realize in their gut right now this is bad and that things are going the wrong direction, but they don't know what to do. What can I do as a citizen to be a part of the solution to turn this thing around? And specifically then to this issue, if you know that all this waste, all this poison is being poured into the cultural mind of the nation, where can you interrupt that? Where can you stop it as a citizen? What can I do to stop this literally nuclear waste being poured into our drinking supply? Is essentially what's happening with cultural Marxism being taught through the education system. And is there a way to essentially outlaw it? So first of all, in terms of solutions, the individual has to start by saying, what's the education in my family? What is my own education? And what is the education of my child? Start there and then move out. So here's where I would start. Number one, get educated yourself. Become a Constitution coach with Patriot Academy. Take our classes. Start learning this stuff. Start reading everything that you can get your hands on about these subjects. Eric Metaxas's Letter to the American Church is essential right now. The Conservatism Revisited. There's so many good books you can read. There's no excuse for any one of us not being educated on the very things that you just went through. So that's number one. Start with yourself. Number two, get your kids out of the public school system and do not send them to a university that is teaching this stuff. That takes some moxie. That takes some. You're going to have to be. People are going to have to be willing to change what they've been doing and not just send their kid to the school where they root for the football team or they want the university, that they can brag about their kid at the next, cocktail get together and all that. We've got to change all that. That's been for too long the focus. So if you're letting your kid go to a public school at this point, I think you're part of the problem. I'm sorry. I know it's easier. I know we're beholden to those local schools. We went there. We think our local public school is not as bad as the other ones. They own it. I'm telling you, the left owns the system now. So even in a good old country public school like my town of Dripping Springs, Texas, this is where the first transgender fight was in the whole state of Texas, was right here in Dripping Springs, Texas. So that's number one. It's what you can do with the things you have control over. Make the hard decisions and start giving of your life, fortune, and sacred honor for your own family and get those kids into an education system, whether you're homeschooling or you can find a private school that's not teaching this junk. That's number one. And then especially at the university level. So even if you get them through a local, K through 12 public school without them becoming a radicalized Marxist, if you send them off to most universities in America, they're going to send you back a radicalized Marxist and they're going to hate you for being part. They're going to claim that you are the problem. I hear it from parents all the time now. So that starts with we can control that. Every one of us can control that piece. But then it's, okay, what is happening at my local school? and at the how are the tax dollars being spent in my state with regard to universities. We've got to defund the left by defunding these universities and separate this cash cow of the public tax dollars from those institutions, and instead make them earn it, and make school choice a factor in every state, make the same type of choice at the federal level, so that at the university level, where instead of these universities getting tens of billions of dollars every single year from us through tax dollars, plus us paying the tuition, it's a complete racket. We've got to stop that. And the only way to stop that is through the legislature, which leads me to the answer to your main question, which is through the legislatures, you can change what's being taught at the schools. There's two places. Number one is get on those school boards and control those local school boards for local education, but then through the legislature, change funding for the local schools, K through 12, and for the universities, and absolutely do what you just said. Absolutely outlaw it in your state, and do not allow critical race theory or any of those things to be taught anywhere in your state that public funds are being used. That's the key. So if any public funds are being received by that school, you absolutely can outlaw critical race theory. Ron DeSantis did it in Florida, and we can do it in every other state. But it's going to take bold leadership from a leader like him, and or massive grassroots pressure on those politicians that aren't bold leaders like Ron DeSantis. So, for instance, in my home state of Texas and your home state of Tennessee, it's going to have to be from the local level, grassroots organizations requiring of those governors to outlaw critical race theory and outlaw any of this, whether it's a critical queer theory, all of this stuff that they're doing. Outlaw all of that and say that is not the job of the public schools. You're supposed to be teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, and you're supposed to be teaching our kids to love their country, not hate their country. So 100%, it is the legislature that defines that. It is the legislature that sets those policies, and then most local school districts just follow whatever the state legislature did. So sorry for the muddy answer, but again, the simple solutions. Number one, protect your own kids. Get your kids out of that system, and then go influence that system. Listen, I homeschooled my kids, or my wife did all the hard work. She homeschooled our kids, but we homeschooled all the way through. But that didn't mean that I wasn't involved in what was going on in the local school district or the state. I'm very involved in the state standards and the state Board of Education here in Texas and in other states. So still be involved in influencing what 80% of the kids are still going to learn. And that means getting legislators elected that will vote for school choice, getting legislators elected that will absolutely outlaw critical race theory and all this Marxism. That takes time, man. Now it is. There's a few states that are really. There's going to be some big battles here in just these first few months of the year because of the legislative sessions all happening across the country, and you can influence that. This is the point where the phone calls and the letters and showing up to testify in committees actually makes a difference. Because I think most of these battles are going to be close, man. It'll be, the Democrats will all vote against making these changes, and some of the Republicans will, because they'll be what you were referring to. Oh, wait a minute, but isn't this anti-free speech if you don't allow this to be taught in the schools? No, this has nothing to do with free speech. This has to do with education policy. What is being taught in the schools that we're paying for? We're not saying that a private school that gets no funding at all from any of us, that they can't teach those things. If that's what you want your kid to be taught, and you want to send them to a private school where there's no state funds, then fine. Let them learn to be a bigoted, radical, racist Marxist if you want. But that should not be taught in our public schools, and it's the legislature that makes that decision, and we are the ones that choose the legislatures, and those legislators will listen. If we put enough pressure on them, we can force them to pass the kind of laws that we're talking about here to do exactly what you're talking about.
What do you think those who are sort of pro-CRT, is it simply such an infiltration of Marxist philosophy and ideology and socialists and so forth? Do you think that ideologically that they really believe we need America to become this because we think it will be a better America? The world is changing, and this will make things a little bit more even and more equitable. That's the term that's always used. It's not fair that America's had so much. It was colonialism. They exploited those who were in third world countries and couldn't defend themselves. And so it's not their fault that they're not where we are. So we need to sort of degrade ourselves a bit to raise these people. That's what the carbon tax is for the eco bull crap that they're doing. The green thing is strictly a power grab to destroy nations that have more. But do you think
it is? I think it's both. I think it's what you're saying, and it's both macro and micro. So in other words, they see America itself as having too much and all of those things. And they want to bring us down to the level. So on a world stage, absolutely, that's part of it. But then it's also, there's a lot of these culture warriors, they believe they are part of a righteous cause, and they think America's done evil itself to its own citizens throughout its history, and therefore that has to change. We have to change all the American institutions because it's not equal and all this kind of stuff. And those are all lies, right? You asked this a while ago, and I didn't answer it, but those are all lies. It started with they had to first plant the seed, America's evil. They had to first plant the seed, our systems are so broken and so systemically racist that we have to tear down the institutions completely and start over. Well, we know that's a lie based on the very simple fact, that 5 to 15 or 20 million people are coming across our border illegally because they want a piece of what we've got. If we are so evil and wrong and racist and horrible and unequal, why in the world do we have 1 out of every 5 immigrants on the planet living in America? Why do we have more immigrants in America than the second, third, fourth, and fifth nations combined? Why do we have more immigrants in America than the bottom 159 nations combined? Because the American dream is alive and well, and everybody on the planet wants it, and they're coming here to get a piece of it. So the lie is obvious just based on common sense when you look at the border and all the people wanting to come to America and enjoy it. It's also a lie and easily proven wrong when you simply look at history. Now, their whole premise is America invented slavery. America is the source of slavery, all of which, of course, is just comical when you think about it. When slavery's been around forever, it's been around since there's been mankind. Every nation on the planet had slavery in 1776. America was the first nation to ban the slave trade, the 4th nation to ban slavery completely, gave up 600,000 casualties to make that happen so that we could become a more perfect union and lead the way. Other nations followed our example in that. All of that history used to be taught. Now, that doesn't mean we became perfect when we ended slavery. Yes, we still had racism in America. And yes, in some areas, there was systemic racism because the system was racist. You and I did a whole show on that when we went down to Birmingham, and we did the whole history thing about MLK and Reverend Shuttlesworth, and we rediscovered all of that stuff. And for my kids, they saw that, and you were a major part of that. So we know there were areas in the 1960s, which is 60 years ago, that is not the America of today. The systemic racism that you will find today is the exact opposite of what these people say America is. Yeah, there's racism right now, and it's systemic. It's in Washington, D.C., with the Biden administration literally choosing whether or not you get aid through COVID based on your race, based on the color of your skin. That is racism, and if the system is the one pushing it, yes, it's systemic racism, but it's the exact opposite of what BLM and all the rest are claiming. If we can only go back to the episode that you and I did and actually capture MLK's dream again, and once again understand content of the character is what we judge each other on, not color of skin, we could find some, go back to racial reconciliation. We had made so much progress in this country. I mean, you spoke at I don't know how many Promise Keepers rallies across the nation, and I went to I don't know how many, where we celebrated racial reconciliation based on the fact that we love each other as fellow humans, and as Christians we understand there's neither Jew nor Greek, and there was so much forgiveness. And you think about it, we were kind of at a high point in the late 90s on this thing, or mid 90s, and since that time, because of the Marxism, we've gone backwards. It's gotten worse instead of better because of Marxism. So anyway, sorry to rant on all that, but it does come back to what you said. They had to destroy the love of America and American values based on lies. It was all based on lies. In order to get to where we are now, where they've been able to tear down some of those institutions. It's one reason people respond to us so much, Brad, and respond to our Comedy and Constitution events so much, because through those events, we teach the truth in a short period of time, and we restore that love of America, and we restore that, and it's not just a wave the flag to wave the flag. I don't have that back there just because I want to be Pollyanna about it. It's because we have an understanding of the greatness of the American story. We're not waving the flag. We're waving the flag because we understand why that flag's worthy of being waved. We understand what it stands for. So that's got to come back. We've got to have that education. We do that individually. Then we do it in our education system itself. And there is an absolute radical change in education happening right now. People are fleeing the public school system. School choice is taking off across the nation. I think you're about to see, I mean, we saw the best school choice legislation in the country passed in Arizona this year. I think you're going to see a huge one passed in Texas in the next 4 or 5 months. That creates options for parents to be able to send their kids to schools that don't teach them to hate their nation and hate their neighbor and hate themselves, but instead send their kids to schools that are teaching them truth about America, teaching them to be good citizens, teaching them to treat their neighbor the way they want to be treated. Those are good values. And we can do that again, and we can get good results again, but man, it's going to take a while. We're in for a fight. It's very simple. Garbage in, garbage out, good stuff in, good stuff out. A lot of garbage in over the last, 50 years, and we're now changing the inputs. We'll get the good outputs again, but brother, it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of hard work.
And worth it. I mean, we don't have an option.
Amen,
it's that or be a slave.
Amen.
So I mean, but again, I got to be honest. You get lazy when you've had too much given to you. Aren't grateful for what you have. You talked about the illegal immigration and the invasion that's happening, that the Democrats are instigating and creating because they want to bring the different demographic, and somehow. This is kind of interesting. I think they think that by getting these numbers up, they'll vote for us and then we'll stay in power, because this is always about power. But
Yep.
But what has been interesting in the last voting is the Black and Hispanic vote has become more conservative. So
That's right.
It's really fascinating that maybe, like you said in the very beginning, maybe they have overestimated people buying into their crap, because people don't like it. There's lots and lots and lots of Black Americans whose heritage was slavery. Clearly, they were brought here without choosing to come. But they see their struggle, which was about as bad a starting place in America as you can get, outside of maybe the Native Americans who are already kind of here going, what happened? So we have two groups that clearly had incredibly evil things happen to them in the course of their engagement in America. There's no question. And by the way, for those of you who are watching who want to use these clips to try to make me into a Christian nationalist, or Rick and I into these bigots and all the nonsense you do because you don't have truth, so you just speak lies because that's your father's way. We are not against teaching the true history of America. We're
actually for it. We're pushing. Yes, we teach it ourselves, right?
We couldn't be more for it. And it's and one of the things I say to people is, for example, do you believe slavery is bad? Oh yeah, we do. Well, how do you know that we had slaves in America? Well, I learned about it. Where? In school. I was taught about slavery from as far as I can remember, and taught this was a terrible thing, and we tried to get rid of it, and we've done little by little, step by step means to do that. And yet, as you said, I think the proof is in the pudding. If this is an evil place, then you must think really badly towards immigrants. Because you must think they're really stupid for them to leave this pristine utopia of South America and come into this racist country. And here's what's even more fascinating. There was a little over 300,000 Black Africans brought from sub-Saharan Africa to the United States at that time. It's a lot. 1.7 million went to Brazil. We don't talk about that for some reason.
That's right. That's right. Anyway, we were small compared to Brazil, England, all these other places. Yeah.
But here's what's more interesting. 300,000. One is too many. We all agree. But over that, by far, over that amount, have willingly chosen to immigrate here from that same area. And by the way, the Nigerians, I think it's Nigerians, are some of the most educated and successful Americans as immigrants.
Yeah.
This are people who came from that same tribal group who were not stolen, who chose to come here.
Yeah, it's about 3 million. Yeah, it's about 3 million Blacks that have come here choosing the American value system in just the last couple of decades as immigrants. And same thing, like we were talking about at the border, and I think you're right. I think they miscalculate
Yeah.
They think that open borders is going to give Democrats power for decades to come because they think they're all going to vote Democrat. I don't think they realize that most of the people that are coming across the border right now, while I think there's a lot of bad players coming across the border, and that's why you have to seal the border, make it 1,000 times harder to get in illegally and 1,000 times easier to get in legally, so you know who it is, and you can find all that, so you get rid of the bad element, keep the good element coming. I don't think they realize most of the people coming across the border are family-oriented, Catholics with pro-life values, that
and
the family's
fleeing
the most important thing,
socialism.
that are fleeing socialism, and they're coming here, and they're gonna get here, and they're gonna go, wait a minute, we're voting for the people that want freedom. I mean, look at all the Cubans in Florida that are rock solid Republicans because they came from tyranny and they get it. Who do you think these people are that are anyway? So I think it's a bad calculation on their part.
Well, maybe, and let's hope. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, the truth is, and again, I don't care what you think about my show or me as a comic or as an American. I don't care. I just deal with truth, and truth is, number one, Jesus Christ is God. That's number one. Number two, America is the greatest nation in human history. And number three, this nation has done more to give more equality, and has been more eclectic, more diverse,
Actual diversity, yeah.
than any nation in history. And by the way, it's really hard to bring lots of people from different cultures and different histories and different ways of living together and somehow have one dream, one foundation, one consistency that makes them feel cohesive. That's not easy to do.
Right.
It's very difficult. And it's why we weren't, our monies and our the term that we use when we reference those who come here is not multiculturalism. That is not what is put on our dollar bills or our coins. It's e pluribus unum. We acknowledge the actual history of America, people from all over the world. And by the way, this nation wouldn't be great if people from all over the world didn't come here, because they brought a long history of tried and true inventions and medicines and hard work and ethics and so forth and so on. But we're e pluribus unum. Yes, there's lots of cultures, but they come here to become our culture.
That's right. Out of many one instead of out of one. Now Marxism wants to take the one and just chop it up, spread everybody out, all these different factions. You know they can turn us against each other that way.
And they have to. They have to. Because like you said, we've made such headway when it comes to racism in America, made such headway that they realize, how are we going to take over if these people love each other?
That's right.
How are we going to take over if they all feel connected? What happens if the typical Black American, and I'm honoring them by calling them Black Americans, not African Americans, because you're one of us. You're Americans.
Right. That's right.
Okay. If they looked at it and said, we came as slaves, we couldn't read, we couldn't write, we weren't allowed to have free reign, we couldn't own property, we couldn't vote, I couldn't keep my family. If somebody wanted to sell them off, they could do that. Once I was set free and I had no way to get that way, people had to set me free because I had no way to do that. Was not allowed in many states to have property and own my own home. Certainly couldn't read. So I really was in about as dire of a strait to be able to become productive in this America as a person possibly could. Now, that's where the CRT stops. Look what you did. Look what they've become, this group of people. And so you're evil, and we need to just deconstruct all this. But within 100 and so many years since the end of the Civil War and the end of slavery, and then the Civil Rights Movement, these people become president of the United States. They become billionaires. They become attorney generals. They become secretaries of state. They become generals in war. They have become business tycoons and magnates. They have become middle-class citizens owning property and so forth and so on. In other words, their story should be inspiration.
That's right. That's right.
Even in the worst case scenario that we all admit They are the perfect example of the American dream. Even they showed what happens when you believe you are greater than what this other group is trying to tell me I am. When you see yourself as a child of God, created by God Almighty, nobody tells me who I am but the Creator. That I have inalienable rights given to me by the Creator. And that all you do is give me that same access, and I'll show you what it looks like to be an American. And we couldn't have done it without them. So the irony is this infantilizing and demeaning Black Americans by putting them back into chains, by saying they are oppressed and can't succeed, when their history is greater than many of the white histories for what they've overcome.
That's right.
Is despicable.
Yeah.
Because they are an inspiration to us. Let me ask you this. We have proof now that the FBI colluded with technocrats to spy on and try to infiltrate the voting for a presidential election, and to squash, censor, demean free speech when it came to medical dissent during Corona. Corona was very important because it was a way for them to find out how to begin to take control and bypass the Constitution. So they used it and leveraged it well. But we now see that we have the greatest law enforcement arm of America, the FBI, now works in hand with Democrats. That's just what it is. This isn't hyperbole or conservative rhetoric. We have the proof now. We know that they've done that. For crying out loud, Tucker Carlson just said the CIA admitted they were involved in the JFK assassination. Holy crap. So when the governmental systems that are designed to defend Americans and our freedoms is now in cahoots with a particular party, when that party is in cahoots with particular businesses, and certainly the dissemination of information, that is literally the definition of fascism.
Yeah.
They're fascists. We now have the government controlling all aspects of the culture and controlling how and where and what will be said, thought of, and allowed. So we deal with this. This is where we're at. It's just true. Now, one would think that we might be able to circumvent that because we still have a constitution. And, of course, we can vote them out. Well, now we're sitting here going, Kerry Lake, Arizona. I've seen this game before.
I've watched this. Yeah, I've watched this movie before.
Especially when she said, I'm not going to debate you. And Kerry had these giant crowds. I don't need to debate. I've got my strategy. I knew, I'm sure you did too. I knew when I heard that she was going to steal this. I knew it because that's what Biden did. He didn't have to go out.
She basically is Biden with a blonde wig in the basement. I mean,
so let's talk about
the same mental capacity too.
So let's talk about that. Two warriors, two American citizens who are presuming that we are in fact the government in the United States. If we don't get this voting thing squared away, we might as well quit. Because if I can't get rid of the cancer, if I can't take it, it's going to kill the body. There's no other solution. Okay. How do we deal with this voting thing? Constitutional expert, former Texas state rep. You've been in the trenches. You've been in the governmental systems. Maybe, I don't have a lot of hope, but maybe there's some Republicans who are actually conservatives and actually care about this country, will actually use their leverage and their access to congressional members to try to start making bills that can defend and protect us. But this voting thing, Rick, has to be fixed.
Yep. Amen.
How?
Okay. So first of all, I want to acknowledge a lot of the things that you just said, because when you have federal law enforcement able to override local law enforcement and now be, like you said, literally locking arms with a political party, and you see the two-tier justice system. We've talked about that, and we don't go too far down that rabbit hole, but it's so obvious right now how they prosecute only their political enemies, and they do it without the Bill of Rights protections and the due process protections that they should. I mean, when you see the evil that's been created because of the collusion of a political party and federal law enforcement and big tech, it's the death of America. If we don't stop it, it is the death of America. Now, we have a window here where we do have an opportunity, which is your question. How do we turn this thing around? And also just acknowledging how big the problem is. If this story is right, the FBI actually paid Twitter to shut down the Hunter Biden story. I just saw that today. So they spent $3 million to stop the Hunter Biden story from coming out. The FBI did that. So there's if you and I had talked about this stuff 5 years ago, we would have been completely labeled conspiracy theorists. It's now fact, and it's being slowly dripped out there in only if you have news sources that aren't the major media. They're not going to cover the stories at all. But you get the it's out there. You can find the stories, and it's fact, and yet people are just shrugging their shoulders like it's no big deal. Well, it is the death of America if we allow this stuff to continue. So how do we stop it? Well, first we have a chance where enough of the elections weren't stolen that you have a Republican House now that with a slim majority that has the opportunity. And if they do not do the types of investigations and the type of negotiations in the budget bills and everything else to curb what's happening, I'm not saying they're going to go as far as I would go, obliterate the FBI and start over. Frankly, the FBI is not even constitutional. We have all these law enforcement agencies at the federal level that are not authorized by the Constitution. The only one is the Border Patrol that is actually authorized by the Constitution because of the immigration authority being given to the federal government. But anyway, a lot of rabbit holes we could go. They're not going to do what I would want to do, but at least calling them on the carpet, at least investigating this stuff and making as much hay as you possibly can, impeaching Mayorkas for the border problem, impeaching, potentially FBI Director Wray. I mean, there are things the House can do that will at least bring enough notice to it that we can start pushing in the right direction. But the other side that you talk about, the election process, if we don't get a handle on that, you're right. There's no way we win. Now, I think we are slowly getting a handle on it. I think there are steps moving in the right direction. As I've said on your program before, long term, I've been through this. I had a recount in my first race. You only solve this problem and get faith in the elections if you have paper ballots, you have complete transparency, you have verification, which is what the paper ballots are for. There's an actual paper ballot trail. When you do a recount, you can actually identify everybody that voted and make sure that it was only people that voted legally, and you can identify the actual number of votes. And then legal remedies to guarantee the verification and guarantee the transparency. So all of those big, fancy words for now look at Kari Lake and look at Arizona. She did not get transparency, and you can't really have verification at this point because of the screwed up election process itself. So she's having to go to the third one, which is the legal remedies. Now, her lawsuit is going forward. We'll see what happens as a result of the lawsuit. There's a chance, but it's a long shot. But it is an important part of the process. I'm actually hopeful that, that just the fact that you had a judge that's allowing the lawsuit to go forward is a big deal. But, man, we're going to lose most of those battles. And it's going to feel like, you and I need to do a new Chasing American Legends episode on this, but it's going to feel like we're essentially in about 1770 to 1774, that time frame where the British just, you got the Boston Massacre, you end up then in 75 with the Shot Heard Around the World that you marched with the Minutemen to reenact. But during that period, it felt like we were up against, there was no way. I mean, it was a long shot. There was an impossible odds kind of situation. And it wasn't until you get deep into the revolutionary period that we started getting enough victories that people started having hope. I hope it's not the case, but I think that's where we are, Brad. And I think we're going to have some dark days ahead, and we're going to have a lot of losses before we start getting victories. But we cannot give up. We absolutely cannot forget that in 1776, in Christmas that year, when Washington crossed the Delaware, another episode that we did, everybody had given up except a handful of people. Most of Washington's troops had left him and deserted him. Every nation said, no, we're not going to participate and help you because there's no way you can win. And yet And yet God intervened. Washington made that incredible decision to cross that icy Delaware River, to attack those Hessian soldiers, to have that great victory, and then to have that swell of troops come back, 15,000 in a matter of a few weeks, and this greatest military turnaround in history. I don't know if we're going to experience that or not, but I know for sure I'm willing to cross the Delaware. I know for sure I'm willing to abide by the password that night, which was victory or death. I mean, I'm willing to put it all on the line and sacrifice everything if necessary, and I know you are as well. And if the people watching are willing to do that, we can turn this around, but it's going to take time. We're going to have a lot of losses before that, but the legislatures have to step up, the state legislatures. We will never solve this from Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And the big solution, as you've heard me talk about many times and you've allowed me to talk about on your program, is a convention of states. You have to get the state legislatures to come together and overrule Washington, D.C.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Not going to tell us what
that's
to do.
what I was going to ask you next anyways.
Yeah.
So tell me where the convention of states might be able to circumvent some of these issues, because obviously if there were certain amendments that somehow address some of this stuff, then it's kind of in stone now. Now, again, look, all sounds potentially hopeful, but the truth of the matter is, if we have a coup, if we've reached a place where we now have a fascist system that is controlling things, and again, I think what we learned with the World Economic Forum and the sort of larger entities and the what do they call it, the deep state.
Yeah,
it's all real. I mean, it's becoming more and more aware that, Rick, there are forces that have been running America in some respects that we had no idea had such influence and had such weight. That's real.
Yeah.
And it's become more and more apparent. Again, Corona was, a godsend in certain degree.
Oh, that was their ticket in, man. It
was a ticket in for them, but it also at least exposed what our enemy was dealing with.
Oh, true. Yeah,
so
yeah.
the
absolutely.
masks came off, and we could begin to see.
Yes.
Well, they came off of me. Not half of America. The masks stayed on, but they came off of the rest of us. But so I say that to say it doesn't matter what amendment we create. It doesn't matter what is constitutional or not. It doesn't matter what a judge says. If enough power has been aggregated from the left to control this nation and decide to just launch some kind of military intervention and say, nah, this is we've I don't know what they would use as the premise, but it doesn't matter at this point. We're not going to win. I mean, in other words, if it becomes might against us, I don't know that we'll be able to pull those militias together in time. But assuming that we are able to get a convention of states, we only have we're shy 17?
15. We need 15 more. Yep.
Okay, so let's just say we get that. Let's say enough folks have said this has got to be done. They get together just to ensure those with, like you said, it's a long process to explain it, but it's not like they can just come in and say, we're making some new rules and that's that. It still has to be voted on, still has to be, I think 3/4 of the country has to vote. So it's very difficult.
38 states to ratify whatever they do. Yep.
So it's not easy, and as it shouldn't be. But let's pretend that God has given us a bone, given us one last shot at, and by the way, that is going to be our only shot. Is that we repent?
That has to be. Yeah.
We repent. We fall on our knees and say, "Have mercy on us, God. We cannot allow these evil elements in our culture to take sway and precedent. It's a mockery of God, and He's not going to put up with it. But let's just presume that somehow we get a convention of states. What? And maybe there's been some new ones added because of where we're at in America. But what amendments do you think would be instituted or voted on, or at least explored, that could fix some of where we're at? Would we make an amendment would we want to make it as specific as you cannot speak about Marxism in schools? Is that one? Or
no. I don't think you'll get any issues like that through an amendment process. And some of those I probably wouldn't want to get that detailed into the Constitution itself. What we want is process amendments. We want to change who has the power and put it back to where the Constitution actually says who has the power, but we're operating under the Constitution, which is where the court has redefined and given so much power to the federal government and taken it away from the states. So it all comes back to who decides. And Brad, we're not going to save a lot of the states. I mean, there's a lot of the states that if you take the power from the federal government and you give it back to the states, there's a lot of states that are going to sink. I mean, they are going to sink under their own weight of their own radical leftism, and people are going to flee those states, as they're doing already in some of them, and they're going to come to states that now, once we have the power and we shift the fight from the feds to the states and we fight within our own states to bring back the principles of liberty and get rid of these crazy policies that are being done, but we no longer have to pay the bills for the crazy states that are making bad decisions. That's where we have a chance at saving freedom in certain states, and other states are going to fall apart. But we have to prevent the federal government from taking money from you and from me in the good states and giving it to these states that are making bad decisions. That's what a convention of states is really all about. It's about letting individual states live under the weight of their own decisions and have the freedom to make good decisions or bad decisions and live with the consequences. And the way that you do that is you shift the power back to true federalism. The Constitution was designed as a federal republic, a constitutional republic, where the only reason we're together as states is to protect against foreign invasion, to have free flow of commerce across the state lines. That's what the Constitution's actually all about. Unfortunately, they took we're going to have the Department of Agriculture, Department of Education. We're going to tell you how to educate. We're going to tell you what marriage means. We're going to tell you all these things. That's got to stop. And so even this Destruction of Marriage Act that just passed the Congress, that they call the defensive, or no, what do they call it? They call it the Respect for Marriage Act, is a destruction of federalism. It's actually saying if California decides you can marry your cat and you move to Texas or Tennessee, that we have to acknowledge that that is a marriage and we have to change our laws. And now it technically says two people, but Brad, these people don't know what a person is. Yeah. They're rewarding kids that think they're a furry. They think they're a cat. They're putting kitty litter into the bathrooms in public schools, and they're affirming this kind of psychological insanity. They will do the same with marriage. Yeah. And so what a convention of states does is it says, federal government, get out of our lives. Your job is to protect the nation from foreign invasion. Your job is to make sure we have patents and copyrights and trademarks that cross the state lines, and that's it. And then it's up to the states to decide who they want to be and how they want to do that. And so that's why I believe convention of states is necessary to then win the battles at the state level. It's not that it's a silver bullet. It doesn't solve anything long term. It just defines the parameters of who does get to decide the things going forward. And then we're in for a fight at the local level. And that's where I think we have to strategize and pick which states we want to really win. Like, which states are we going to put a stake in the ground and say, now it's time to really fight for Tennessee and for Texas and for, maybe Washington State or Idaho, or which, that's long-term where we're headed. I mean, there is no question that half the country is for socialism and Marxist ideas. And so we have to decide how we're going to do this without a civil war. And there's a chance we can do it without civil war. I truly believe that. That's what we fight for, is to make sure that it's done peaceably. And then if we have a revival, like you said, if God actually gave us a full-blown revival, then we have a chance at saving all 50 states. If there's a true spiritual revival, you could save all 50 states and have liberty. But without the revival, you're going to have to save some states, save liberty in some states. Some states are going to be full-blown Marxist, and possibly we stay together as a nation in order to prevent us from being Chinese Marxists, right? Prevent us from being defeated by China. And I know some of that sounds crazy to people, but that's the way you got to start thinking, is what do we want to be in 50 years? And what is this nation going to look like? Man, sorry for going so far down that rabbit hole.
That's
those are the things we got to think about.
No. You're right here, because that's what you're great at, and everything you said is necessary. They hear me talk, but I'm not an expert in everything. I do want the states, obviously, to have their own choice as to how they want to manage themselves. That's what the original intent of the Constitution was that the states could make their own vibe, their own flavor, their own DNA, as long as it wasn't unconstitutional. They could do kind of whatever they wanted. And I love that. I really do. I want there to be Oregons and Washingtons and Massachusetts and Rhode Islands to exist, deep, deep blue leftists. And I wish everybody would flee. And I wish they simply lived completely and utterly 100% in the Marxist socialist leftism that they want so that I could watch it burn. Watch it burn
and be the
destroy
example.
Yeah.
Be the example of what not to do.
That's what
That was the whole idea. We're supposed to have the laboratories, right? The states are supposed to be the laboratories of try stuff, and if it doesn't work, other states don't do it. But right now, they're forcing it on everybody.
That's why I say that. And again, you know, people always twist my words because, oh, you're a Christian, you want bad things to happen to these people. No, I want people to get exactly what they ask for. You want freedom. You want to be socialist. You want the government to control everything. You want them to tell you what is true and what is not true, what you can wear, what you can't wear, what you have to inject, what you can inject, what you can eat, what you can't eat, what business you can have, when you can have it, and if you can have it, and when you over. If that's what you want, I want you to have that completely, because I know it will self-destruct.
Yeah.
And it will burn as it deserves to. I don't want anybody to do that. I'm calling on fellow citizens, and I've made I've made this very clear. It is very clear to me that we need to, at least at this time, understand that we can no longer call everyone an American anymore. That we have to differentiate between citizens of the United States and Americans. Now, historically, once you became a citizen, you were American. It's one of the things that made America unique. But I don't believe you have that right anymore. You can be a citizen, but to be an American means you're an American. You care about our history, you live it, you die for it, you defend it, and that is the principles of this nation and the Constitution. No, we don't want to go back to Jim Crow. No, we don't want to relive slavery and all the nonsense you do and say because you don't have any good ideas or thoughts or concepts. All you do as a parasite is suck everything good out of that which virtuous people have made, and then you leave with the hellhole that you've created, and you deserve everything that's coming to you. You know, the same God that I serve that said, turn the other cheek, turn tables. The same God that I serve that said, be gracious and love and forgive your enemies and love them because they don't know what they're doing. Also said, brush the dust off your feet. Don't throw pearl before swines. Leave them in the mire and the shit that they have created. That's also the Bible. And I want people to understand how deeply this matters to us. We are willing to fight and do whatever is necessary. One last question, maybe hypothetical, just curious. It's just maybe my own little personal quirky curiosity. One of the reasons that was cited by why Lincoln went to war was not necessarily just because he didn't want slavery to exist. I think he didn't want slavery to exist, but he also said if that's what is necessary to keep the Union together, then so be it. But one of the biggest reasons, and again, this is your wheelhouse, so please correct me if I'm wrong, that he went to Civil War was he said, I don't want the Union to be severed. I do not want to allow secession. We need to stay one. Is it possible, or even at the worst case scenario, feasible, that there could become a secession, that the blue United States remains blue and the rest of us who are red say we were going to call ourselves the new United States of America and secede? Is that even possible as far as constitutionally and feasible practically?
Well, I'll first answer it historically. Of course. I mean, that's the way of nations. That's the way of history. You know, that is, you know, we're at that point of nearly 250 years. That's when most nations and empires break up. And so 100% it can happen. I think we're naive to think that things are always going to be as they've been. And so you're right to ask the question, 100% historically. Constitutionally debatable, right? I mean, there are many that still believe, you know, listen, okay, we answered that with the Civil War, but, you know, did we, and was that a different time and a different issue and a different situation? And people were motivated, I think, more for freeing the slaves and ending slavery for their neighbors in the southern states than they were even for keeping the nation together. Even though Lincoln himself, I think you're right. I think he said many things like that. I don't think we're that nation anymore. You know, I don't think we have a shared value system anymore. And so it's much more likely that we would split up. And it's very possible that there's a peaceful dissolution, but that is that I can't give you a historical example of that. Every time there's been a split, it's been not peaceful. And so that's why I don't want to go through that. And I also don't want to be in a situation where, if Texas were to secede, then now we're having to defend ourselves against China by ourselves. Right. And or even if you split the nation down the middle, I think California would be taken over by China very quickly. And now you've got on our soil it moving our direction. So there's global geopolitical reasons for why I want to keep it all together. But absolutely we must war game that out. We have to think like that. We have to say, okay, if it splits, if states start seceding, what's the right way to try to do that? I think we have to be thinking ahead and be aware that could happen, if for no other reason, to motivate us to do everything possible to prevent that from happening. Because there are so many good people in all 50 states. Just because California has gone so woke and their legislature is nuts and their governor is nuts, there are millions of conservatives in California, millions of Christians in California, millions of good people there that need to wake up and turn their state around, as well as us turning around. So it's, I guess that's my way of saying, yes, it could go there. I want to do everything in our power to prevent it from going there, but we absolutely must realize it could, and that should motivate us to do our part to save the nation as a whole.
Well, just because I feel like it is so similar to Civil War, as far as the two sides that are in such conflict and just are so diametrically opposed to each other's ideologies, that it just feels like it's that kind of a sense of what do they call it, Schadenfreude, or whatever the German word about, the way of the day, or how it feels. And it just feels like that's kind of where we're at, where we just are in conflict. And it's almost like without divine intervention or some kind of resolution to learn to be at peace when we disagree, it just seems like it wouldn't be necessarily completely inconceivable that could be another option that could end up. And no, I don't want it. None of us do. But you know what? None of us wanted to be here right now. None of us wanted to see our beautiful, amazing nation literally begin to die. We're holding on to this nation as it lays on the ground, heaving, trying to catch its breath, and we're hanging on to it. It's still here, still alive, but it really is dying.
It is. The American culture is crumbling, man. There's no denying it. It's falling apart all around us. Now the question is, do we curl up in the fetal position and give up, or do we pick up those pieces and start rebuilding? And that's why we do what we do. That's why we do what we do together. That's what you're all about. It's what we're all about. And there are millions of other Americans that are ready to say, not on my watch. I'm going to do everything I can to save this thing. But it's going to take real sacrifice. People have got to start thinking about, what am I willing to do? How am I willing to change my job so that I can put in 10 hours a week volunteering and educating people on the Constitution and going to testify at state legislature committees, all that kind of stuff? What am I willing to do to get rid of whatever hobby or whatever expenditure every month so that I can give $100 a month to candidates, or $100 a month to Patriot Academy, or whatever? I mean, everybody's got to start thinking like that. And it's no longer just 10% tied to the church. It needs to start being 15 or 20% tied to the church, another 10 or 15 or 20% elsewhere, and living on 60%, whatever you got to cut to be able to do that if you really want to save the country. Lives, fortune, sacred honor, that's what it's going to take.
Amen. Well, as we try to breathe life back into this poor soul of America and give it CPR, which would be return to the Constitution and patriotism and restoration. I just made that up.
That's our next tour, brother.
Our new CPR. But you know what? Let's go down like men. Let's go down like patriots. Let's go down like Christ followers. Let's go down like Americans, so that we don't have to go down.
Yeah,
so that
amen.
we can win. We can
Amen.
restore and try to even somehow give an olive branch to our fellow citizens who walked away from what this great nation was, and say, you know what? We'd love you to come back. We need you. But we will not give this away without a fight. That's just simply where we're at. Well, God bless you, Rick Green. Thank you that you're in my corner watching my six.
Right back at you.
And, I got to say, folks, as you know, I'm Brad Stine Has Issues. You always turn in thinking it's going to be funny because all the comedy podcasts are funny. And then I sit here and make you sad, and you're in therapy, and you have heart attacks, and you need, nitroglycerin tablets. But I care about what's really true so that we can try to not just have a podcast and wring our hands over the state of things. And so we feel good about ourselves for exposing it. But no, practical means to fight so we can actually save the greatest nation in human history. That's why I'm here. That's what makes me God's comic Brad Stine. That's what makes Rick Green America's Constitution coach. That's what makes our live events, the comedy and Constitution events, which you need to keep your eyes open, because we're going to go back out on tour, and we're going to be out there once again in Texas, but maybe even some other states. So I think we need to inspire, energize, and let you know that you're not alone and you're not crazy. We are going to find a way to restore this great nation. So remember, folks, PC free, it's liberty. You must hate and despise political correctness. And if somebody says you're not being politically correct, you need to say thank you. What a compliment. This is God's comic Brad Stine. Remember, all I'm doing is putting the woke back to sleep. God bless you.